Hello, and thank you for joining this presentation on the City of San Diego's Inclusive Public Engagement Guide, and for your commitment towards contributing valuable insights towards our collective goal of more inclusive engagement with the city and our work in your communities. During this presentation, we will be sharing more about the guide, discussing different aspects of community engagement, and outlining our next steps for this project. We are with the City Planning Department. The project team includes Anisha, the Program Manager for Public Engagement, myself, Kevin, a Senior Planner, and Vanessa, an Associate Planner, all focusing on public engagement. And so now I'll pass it over to Anisha, who will give us an overview of the guide.
Great, thanks, Kevin. We will now provide an overview that highlights some of the most important parts of the Inclusive Public Engagement Guide and explain its purpose. This is our citywide organizational chart showing how citizens of San Diego, the mayor, our city council, and city departments are related to each other. Our city departments take care of everyday services, including maintaining our public spaces like our streets and libraries, oversee essential services such as our fire rescue department, and develop citywide or community level initiatives that seek to enhance San Diego. What we wanted to highlight here is that the Inclusive Public Engagement Guide's focus is on city departments. We have about 12,000 employees and more than 20 city departments that have each done things a bit differently in public engagement. With the Inclusive Public Engagement Guide, we can start to see public engagement happening in more consistent ways across the city. Our primary audience for this guide is city staff, and we have worked hard to make this a useful resource that will be helpful for staff at any level and with any prior degree of experience or knowledge in public engagement. We have also made this guide public so that the public can fully understand how the city engages with them. This guide was intentionally formatted on web. It is also searchable to increase its functional use. If a PDF is preferred, the PDF version can be downloaded from the website as well. The guide includes several sections, including a section about the guide, which includes the public engagement that we have conducted over the past several years and why inclusive public engagement matters. We have a section about the history and background of public participation within the city, including our existing regulations around this topic and the history of how certain groups of people have been excluded from decision-making. We have identified who is underrepresented in decision-making so that we can better reach and engage them going forward. We also have information about how to implement public engagement and work with different stakeholders or partners to do so. Our engagement techniques and approaches section provides more than 30 different ways to share information with and collect input from the public. We also have a section on clear and inclusive communication because it all starts with the public understanding what we're doing if we want them to be able to provide us input. And finally, we have a specifically public-facing section of the guide called Get Involved with the City that provides the public tips and resources for how to get engaged with us and best make their voices heard through volunteer opportunities, staying informed of ongoing engagement events, and more. Public input can influence the city's plans, policies, programs, projects, and regulations. These are all different ways that the city can bring about desired change. So, as an example, our Parks Master Plan was adopted in 2021 by the City Council to plan for the city's current and future changing recreational needs. We sought public input to help develop this plan. Within this plan, we have policies which reflect the goals of the plan. For example, one policy within the Parks Master Plan is to provide flexible and innovative park spaces, including neighborhood parks, public plazas, and temporary activated spaces to meet the city's future recreation needs. An example of a program that implements this policy is Parks After Dark. This program activates community park spaces as festival spaces with games, food, and activities on summer nights, providing community members safe places to play and come together. An example of a project that implements this policy would be installing a new basketball court to create new opportunities for recreation and play. And finally, an example of a regulation that implements this policy is amending our land development code to allow for community gardens in more areas. All of these things can be influenced by the public's input, and our city staff will use this guide to help obtain that input. It's important to distinguish some terminology in the Inclusive Public Engagement Guide. In the guide, we define public participation as the process through which the public receives information and shares input. Public outreach specifically refers to the one-way process where the city is informing or sharing information. And public engagement is the two-way process in which the city both shares information and also collects input or feedback for decision-making. This guide covers best practices for both. The purpose of the guide, firstly, is to make better and oftentimes more sustainable decisions over the long term based on community input. This is also an opportunity to better reach and engage groups that are less represented and have had their voices less heard by decision makers. We're aiming to increase operational efficiency within the city as well. Many of the projects that our city departments are working on require public engagement, but we have lacked a standardized way of conducting that. And finally, it's an opportunity to build trust, where we know trust has diminished over time with government. In 2023, our team started public and internal engagement on what people hoped to see captured in this guide. Internally, we asked our city departments, and we started public engagement, which included convening a focused discussion group, conducting an online survey, and having conversations with city-affiliated groups such as community planning groups, boards and commissions, and working groups. The drafting process for the guide started in 2023 and continued through this year, 2025. The guide was made publicly available for formal comment in September 2025 and October 2025. Input was then incorporated during that period, and the guide was then presented as an information item in November 2025 to the City Council Rules Committee. To continue covering what the guide includes, we have principles that reflect the city's high-level values for public participation. The first is build community relationships. By that, we mean fostering authentic and sustained connections between city staff and the public to cultivate trust. The second is communicate clearly. By that, we mean communicating information in accessible, understandable, and relatable ways so that people know what's at stake. Next is commitment to engagement process. This accounts for things like thoroughly researching which stakeholders may be impacted, following up after input has been provided, and more. The next is inclusion, which means actively inviting and welcoming participation from all people and groups and inviting diverse perspectives. And finally, transparency means clearly articulating the goals of our engagement, providing regular updates throughout a project, and sharing how input was considered. With that, I'll pass it back to Kevin to continue providing an overview of this guide.
Great, thanks, Anisha. The underrepresented groups section includes qualitative and quantitative research on how we determine who is less represented in city decision-making, meaning their voices are less heard by decision makers. To understand this, we looked at the demographics of who has participated in city initiatives in the past, analyzed groups in San Diego that advocate for different causes, and asked the public who they saw as less represented in participation. We found that people of color and youth were the least represented groups. Understanding these underrepresented groups helps us in implementing public engagement. We can plan for different ways to effectively engage and communicate with these people to better include them in our decision-making. The Engaging Diverse Groups section includes information on how to tailor ways and strategies to make outreach and engagement more inclusive to different groups of people, including older adults, people experiencing homelessness, and those in emergency shelter, and more. For example, the Engaging Children and Youth section, which provides specific recommendations for sharing information and inviting input from youth, has considerations for before engaging, challenges and barriers to participation, and tips for outreach and engagement. Over the last few years, our internal and public engagement process, we have identified common barriers to participation. Some barriers that were identified include a general lack of awareness of the city and its responsibilities, as well as gaps in information and opportunities to participate. Language barriers, limited access to reliable internet or technology, structural exclusion, which are barriers like systemic disinvestment created by institutions like the government that can prevent access to participation, and lastly, time and competing demands, especially for those with fewer resources. These barriers inform the development of the guide, which includes processes that can help alleviate them. By implementing the guide and its recommendations, more people may be able to participate in the engagement process in the future. When project budgets can accommodate it, the city may also provide participation support to decrease barriers to participation. This section includes guidance for things like gift cards, prizes, meals and refreshments, and childcare to make it possible for more people to participate. It's important that good processes follow for planning and conducting public engagement, so the implementing public engagement section of the guide defines 8 steps for conducting effective public participation. In step 1, staff understand what project resources they have available, such as the staff capacity, time, and money available for a project. During steps 2 and 3, staff are to understand the project area and identify stakeholders. They may do this by reviewing past input received about the topic and conducting early interviews with stakeholders. During steps 4 and 5, staff will determine the level of participation and communicate clearly about how the public can provide input. In step 6, staff create and implement a public engagement plan informed by stakeholders, research, and project resources available. Throughout step 6, staff will follow up with participants about how their input was used. Reporting back and following up is emphasized again in step 7. The guide provides recommendations on how staff can report back to participants and show how they were heard, such as through a report back summary. And lastly, in step 8, staff evaluate the engagement process to continuously improve in future engagement processes. The public shared that it's important to work with engagement partners like community-based organizations, community planning groups, neighborhood associations, and businesses. Tips for working with these different groups are included in the guide. For example, for the Working with Community-Based Organizations page, we outline what they are, how staff can create paid partnerships with them, why it's important to share information with them, and more. The guide also includes over 30 different techniques and approaches for outreach and engagement. This includes things such as art-based engagement, community cafes, public service announcements, and vision walls. There are also more traditional techniques such as public meetings or workshops. The guide walks staff through how to implement each technique before, during, and after, as well as how much time, money, and staff capacity they take. The Communicating with the Public section contains guidance on how to help staff make information clear to the public. For instance, it provides information on clear, simple, and inclusive language. And additionally, it has information on translation and interpretation and how to make documents accessible for people with sight, mobility, and hearing disabilities. It has guidance on public speaking, since staff need to clearly convey information to the public, which in turn helps the public better understand and provide input on city projects. Additionally, there's information on facilitation of engagement events that provides guidance on how to create an inclusive engagement environment that is welcoming and respectful of all participants. When staff follow guidance in this section, the city can increase public's awareness and understanding of city projects. And finally, you can share with others how to participate with the city. The Get Involved with the City section provides an overview of what the city does, the public's role as voters and constituents in shared decision-making, different ways to volunteer or get involved, and specific guidance for how to effectively participate at public hearings. We hope this information helps the public understand how to effectively get involved in city decision-making. I'm now going to pass it over to Anisha for some next steps.
As far as our next steps, we are grateful to have grant funding from the San Diego Association of Governments, or SANDAG, which is our regional planning agency, to train city staff on this guide so that especially those in public-facing roles feel confident using the Inclusive Public Engagement Guide in their work. This training will start in 2026. Some of this grant funding will also go toward public workshops in 2026, where we will continue to share information about what the city does, why it matters, and how the public can get involved in shaping city decisions. The website where you can find the guide is sandiego.gov/engagement. In addition to this, you can also email us at any time with questions or comments at engagement@sandiego.gov. With that, we've come to the end of this presentation, and thank you so much for watching.